Hello, everyone.
Hey, Greg.
Hello, RChain.
We have a lot to talk about today, and we have some demos to give today, which are pretty exciting. I'm going to jump right in. It looks like we already have a quorum, so we will begin. As I like to begin, really like to begin with the technical updates. So I'm going to hand it over to Meta and Kelly and the team who are going to give demos.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Just checking in. All right. So yes, as Greg has communicated, we are doing demos today. So we've got some very exciting demos lined up. I want to talk a little bit about some metrics and what the team's done, and then we'll go into demos at the end of the update. So happy to report our node, we've got 505 pulls on Docker Hub. That's very exciting. That's about 450 pulls of the node.2 release. And that means if those folks go ahead and just do an update for the latest or run the node again, they're going to get node 3 when we push tomorrow. We got demos today for node 3 release. Couple of things I want to talk about with the release, to set expectations that this is pre-release software. So the team is working really diligently to add new features, but there are still kinks in the software. We're trying to get the user experience to be as smooth and seamless as possible, but it's not 100%, it's not perfect. And we look forward to hearing feedback from all of you on any challenges that you hit so we can make it better for the next iteration. We are adding more features to the node for system administrators, and what that means is as the node becomes more configurable, there are more and more options available to how to set up the node as we add more features. So the documentation is going to get a little bit longer. The command line to run the node from Docker is going to get a little longer. So please do read the documentation and ask questions. Put those questions in the forum so it makes it easier for us to build a knowledge base so that other users can learn from your experience. And the forums are on developer.rchain.coop. We're still hiring system administrators to support the launch of testnet and mainnet. So please do go ahead and check those out on the PyroFX website and apply if you know, and if you know anybody, tell them about it too. So I'm going into the update now, Rolang team. So we're going to be doing a demo of the consensus protocol running in node 3 after the update. It's a very exciting demo. Michael Birch and Kent will be giving that update and doing that demo. We've done some refactoring in the consensus code base to make it more functional. So Pavel brought to us a very specific functional style of writing code, and the team has heartily accepted that. And so we're doing a little bit of refactoring of the code base so it meets those requirements. So it'll be very nice and easy to maintain code base and highly functional in its nature, which aligns very well with our desires as a cooperative to have correct by construction code. The consensus team reports that they're currently using hash maps internally in the protocol, but they want to stop doing that because there's a performance hit. And so they're going to be looking at maybe some kind of linked list structure for the internal representation of the DAG. And that's work that they'll be doing moving forward. On the Rolang side, we've got some features that we've implemented. These features will be available in node 4. But the work is being done now. They've implemented bundles, methods, and nth of list. We did fix the syntax exception handling in the node. There was, for those of you that used node 2, you probably recall that when you hit a syntax exception, it just exited. That has now been fixed to where it doesn't exit the node. And remainder syntax has been implemented. So lots more features for Rolang coming. The next major update for Rolang will be part of node 4, and we hope to have a lot more documentation on the language, semantics and syntax, and improved tutorial and user guide for the language. So lots of work being done there. Node team is going to demo some of the node specific features in 0.3. We are prototyping the Merkle-Patricia tree to support the blockchain. We're doing some work on the communications enhancements related to gRPC and TLS. So we're refactoring the communications library to use TCP and transport layer securities. That's a pretty big fix. The Bootstrap node will be upgraded sometime today. If you're running a node, your node won't connect to the Bootstrap node without the latest software. So this is kind of a quote unquote breaking change. And you'll need to update your software once the Bootstrap's been updated with the latest release. We also are happy to report that there's a Python interface, a Python client to the Node API that was built by Dan Connolly, a community member. So if you wish to use that, it is in the RChain repo. Can everyone mute? Thank you. You can use that if you wish to invoke the interpreter. So we've got a little bit of the makings of a beginning of a thin client. The Rosette team is continuing to research how to re-architect the virtual machine. Tim is trying to work out a solution with his effects approach so that effects get emitted that reflect those changes. And we have a problem that we have to create global objects locally. So they're continuing to sort through that. And I hope to have a work plan and a prototype by the end of this sprint. Check the website out, developer.rchain.coop, for the latest releases along with the documentation. And if you find an issue, file a bug in Jira. Our Jira is now open to all. You're welcome to create an account in Jira Confluence and file a ticket. And as well as take a look at the documentation. I've been doing a lot of work around specifications writing and specifications review. So please don't hesitate to provide feedback. And I'm going to open it up for questions and then turn it over to the demo. Bootstrap has been updated just a few minutes ago. Going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Birch. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am here.
You have the floor.
So I'll start with a screen share here for people.
It's our pleasure to welcome you to San Francisco at the current time.
All right, so can people see my screen here?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to be doing this demo from the jar because I have the dev environment all set up to compile from source, but it should all work the same from the Docker image and the RPM packages and all that kind of thing. So we're just going to go ahead and run the node. And when we do that, it starts up all the required things to connect to the Bootstrap, which Pavel will talk more about later. So we see that we've got 4 peers. But now for the Casper part, we've got another flag that you can add to the node, which is this deploy demo. So if we go ahead and hit enter on that. So what this does is it's just generating or simulating some deploys, like some pieces of Roland code that might be sent to a node to be processed by that node's validator. And so you can see it's just listing out the things that it's sending. But if we go back to the node that we just started, we see that it's receiving them and keeping track of the ones that it receives. And what it does is it just accumulates these deploys until it's ready to make a block and send it out. And it'll do that on the 10th deploy. So we see that happening here now. So we see that it proposed a block, and it gives us the first little bit of its hash and tells us some information about it. And it adds it to the internal state of Casper, and then it starts sending the block to all of its peers. And so if I pull up a separate instance of this that I had running in the background, we see, oh wait, that's the, I want this one. Sorry. This one. So we see this is a separate instance of the node, which was one of the peers, and it adds the blocks. And then whenever a node receives a block, it's going to also forward it to all of its peers. And so the idea here is that in the actual network, it doesn't need to be fully connected in the sense that every node knows every other node. It just needs to be connected in that every node is reachable through some sequence of peers. And also we can see here, if I highlight the right spot, that after we get a block, it updates the fork choice rule.
Oh, it's right down there. There it's.
The new fork choice is block number 2. And so right now, it's just my node sending blocks to the network. So the fork choice is always going to be the block that I created. But you can imagine that if other people want to play around with this, they could start their own instance of node and run this deploy demo, and you could have blocks flying all over the network, and the DAG that would be, or the DAG that would be built, a single chain would be selected out of that as the fork choice.
Is there any interest to do community-run testing for this, Michael? Would you have any interest in seeing if there's a bunch of people that want to run nodes and organize a time when we got blocks flying all around the network?
It might be fun, just as like a stress test to see how many blocks we can actually get flying around at once, and sort of what the propagation time is. But that would be the only purpose. There's no interesting data in any of these blocks just yet.
Yep. Okay. Great. Carry on.
So that's really all I've got. This is what it does. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? We'll stop this.
One question that came up in Boulder that Vlad was raising was sort of when does finalization run, and what's happening in this prototype in relationship to that question?
So in this prototype, we have a safety oracle implemented, but we're not exposing any work it's doing to the user as of yet. So there's, in this version, no way to tell whether or not a block is safe, but we will come out with an API basically where you can query and ask node, is this block safe? And it will run a safety oracle in the background.
Got it. Well, that's kind of an interesting thought, is like finalization is driven by demand, right?
Well, so finalization it will also be run internally for the node's own purposes, just because once a block is finalized, basically you can drop it out of memory and put it onto disk, because you don't really, in some sense, you don't care about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm understood, but I'm just thinking about a demand-driven finalization is an interesting idea. Like if a bunch of agents care about a particular block, then run finalization early up to some fault level, right? So, anyway, something we can talk about and think about. Really cool demo, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is just awesome.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions? I'll see about arranging a block bash if we want.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Quick question on the, was it just an arbitrary choice to choose 10 blocks or 10 messages before creating a block? Or is that actually...
It was totally arbitrary for the purposes of the demo.
Just want to make sure. Like,
yeah.
It seemed like a very nice number, but... Yeah.
Probably what we'll do for the actual version of Node that validators would run would be expose the gRPC interface so that validators can sort of have custom logic around when they want to propose blocks.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Because then they could choose to get faster blocks or bigger blocks depending on what incentives might be.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrific. Thank you, Michael. If there's no other questions, I'd like to turn it over to Pavel.
Go, Pavel.
Good morning and good evening, depending where you are. So yeah, quick disclaimer here. My kids are going to bed right now, so if they rush into this place, I don't guarantee what might happen, but hopefully they will be in bed. All right, so what we're gonna have right now, what we're gonna see is node interacting, how communication layer works out, how keys are being exchanged, also so some improvements to REPL and quick demo to evaluate eval flag. So really quickly, we can instantiate our Bootstrap node right now by -b. We provide a port, for example, here's going to be this one, and what? Oh yeah, okay, standalone. Sorry, we need a standalone. So that instantiates our node, which is running, and you will see a few things which are running right now. So there is an HTTP server. At some point, this HTTP server will completely disappear because right now we have a gRPC server running and listening at some point. And also we have, as we had before, the metrics server running on this port. So now, while that is running, we can now try to connect to that node. So what we'll have to do is we have to provide some parameters. So we want to say to which bootstrap we want to connect. So that's basically this little address that we have running over here. Now we also need to wait. What? Okay, something happened to my -b. There we go. We need to provide a port on which we want to run our software. There is another port that we need to provide right now, and it's a new thing, which is called the gRPC port. So that's the port where the gRPC API is going to live. It obviously has some default values, but since I'm running 2 nodes on 1 machine, there would be conflict in terms of the ports available. That's why I'm explicitly providing those parameters over here. What else? There's also the HTTP port, which we have to, where there's also a default value, but because of the running the same 2 nodes on the same machine, I have to be very explicit about. And the last port is metrics port, which I have to also provide explicitly here. Once we have that, when we hit enter, we should get standard logs that the node is trying to connect to our bootstrap. We see the message that's connected, and we see the numbers of peers that's connected. So one of the things that you might actually see is that we are bootstrapping to this node. We initialize the first phase of handshakes. This is the part where we exchange public keys with our node. And once that happens and the node is happy about it, then it will initialize the second phase handshake protocol. And once that is succeed, we consider ourselves connected. So we see the list of peers 1. And if we would go actually to our bootstrap node, we would also see that number of peers was updated. Now, if I kill that node right now, so if I kill it, and we obviously we'll see in a second that the number of peers in Bootstrap is one more time 0 because we lost the connection to that other node. Now, if I run this node, but what I will do is I will actually wait. If we run this, so our node, and we just need to provide the name that we had previously. So whatever that name is, give me a second. Just completely lost it. I want to show you guys that it's pretty easy to see how I just completely don't see the value where that is. Initially, I'll see it over here. There we go. This guy. So right now I'm trying one more time connect to that bootstrap node, but I'm gonna act as the same node that just lost connection, trying to reconnect one more time. So if I do that, it will run the connection, and we will see that it immediately jumped to the second handshake protocol. There's no longer any sort of public key exchange needed because they met in the past. They remember that, and even if I killed the bootstrap node and rerun it, we would still see that thing running. So previously, we initialized the first handshake protocol here, and the second handshake protocol happened after the keys were exchanged. Here, since that they learned about each other in the past, they store that information, and they can reuse it when they connect one more time to each other. Now, so that's important thing. Also, if I kill right now Bootstrap node and it's completely disconnected, no longer exists, if I try to connect to it one more time, what will happen is that previously in the previous versions, the node would just immediately stop, saying like there's no way for me to connect to it. Right now, we run few reattempts until we realize that most probably the Bootstrap node doesn't exist, and the user gets the appropriate feedback that shutting down, and for the reason is that it failed to connect to Bootstrap node and it's exiting. So the Bootstrap node might not exist, might not be available. There might be some network issues along the line. All right, so let's instantiate that Bootstrap node one more time. So we have it running right now, and right now this node is running. And what I can do is I can right now run our program with REPL flag. So what REPL does in a previous release, REPL was just instantiating the whole thing, the whole program, without the peer-to-peer network. Right now, it's completely rewritten. It's a completely new experience in a way that REPL becomes a thin client that connects to the given node and call whatever Roland queries you're going to give it to him. Just sends it over the network to that node running, and then gives you the result back. So what it means is that you can have your node running in your basement, and you can run your REPL on your local machine, and then as long as there's a network communication, they can communicate easily. So the previous REPL experience was a little bit horrible. We have a community effort to provide a very cool REPL using Python, but in the meantime, I sort of, while going back from Boulder from our conference, on the plane, I just created this little REPL, a little bit of, I would say a little bit of REPL++, I would say. So it has some nice features. It's still not perfect. It's far from what would you normally expect from a mature language, but it's still, I would say, a much more reusable than it used to be. So what do we get from REPL is that right now, if I write some Roland code, so for example, standard out standard out, and I would like to send it some message, hello, right? It sends that message to the node. We can actually see on the node side that it got that part of Roland code. It evaluated and it did something like putting here the standard output that particular message. What we get back in return is the content of the R space, so we can actually see how the R space looks like. It will react right now to your trying to do some crazy stuff to it, and if you're done with it, you can just quit it and it will work. So one of the things that you might find is that right now it has some history. So if I type something in, something else, and something else, it's available through the history, and there is some additional, at least some ability to give us code completion. It's far from being perfect, and that does not always work, but it's just better than what we used to have. Also, important thing is that if we right now, so I have this little file here called, I think it's called example. Yeah, so it's an example. It's an example which holds a little bit of Roland code right here. So what I can do is I can run rnode --eval, and it's yet another fin application. So it's not instantiating a new node. What it will do is it will try to connect to the node server running somewhere out there in your basement, let's say, and run a piece of Roland code available on that server. So example and Roland and go. And what we should get in return is that the same, so we sort of get the same output that we would get from the REPL. It's just like we have right now ability to write some piece of Roland code on within the file and then run it on the node. Now, this is unfortunately counterintuitive because that file, it works on my computer because both the node and the Fin client, the eval program, they live on the same machine. If they were actually living in two different machines, it's a path to the file that lives on the server, not on the client. So it is a little bit counterintuitive. And one of the improvements that we would like to present in the very near future is that like you will have ability to run the content of the file on your local machine rather than the file that lives on the node machine. So, but this is something that we have to be aware of. So that's the REPL, that's the eval. What else? I don't remember if there was anything else. Oh yeah, we have
list of peers.
Yeah, we have
gRPC API for to return the list of peers.
Yeah. So right now, okay. So we have that Bootstrap running over here. Let's maybe you know what? Let's maybe run one more node so we have more than one peer available. Oh yeah, because it's a different server. Because right now I've restarted the server, so it's a different one. Let me kill that one more time. Bootstrap. A second. There we go. Okay. So we can do this. Come on. And like that. All right. So currently, the gRPC API gives us a few services, a few RPC methods available. So two of them are actually being used by REPL and the eval mode, so that you can run your REPL as a Fin client. There's another service that we right now publish called diagnostics, and for now, they just give you a list of peers, so you can call it and get a list of peers that are connected to your node, and you can call it from any library, any programming language that you want. But also, there's a little program over here that I've written, our node, and the flag is what's the flag? I think it's called diagnostics. Yeah, like that. So it will right now connect to your node, to your running node, and give you the list of peers that the node is connected to. And obviously, this little feature, this little program will grow over time while our gRPC service will grow. So yeah, you might be asking, you might be wondering, like, okay, but how did your program connect to the given node? How I will identify to which node I would like to connect to? Well, if you run, where's my camera? If you run help, you will see that there is a flag, gRPC host and gRPC port. So those two flags are needed to specify where your node lives. They obviously take default values. That's why I didn't have to provide them by default. But if you try to connect to something which is in your basement on the other side of the world, you would identify that node by providing gRPC host and gRPC port. And that's, I guess, pretty much it. I don't know if there's anything else to be added. I don't think I missed anything, but maybe, Madam, maybe you can help me out. I think that's pretty much it.
I think that's it. So one of the things I want to call out here that's different is you probably noticed that Pavel is running the node in one window and then connecting to the node via other terminal windows. And this is it's an important distinction, and it's a little different in the way we've run the node in the past. So the node is becoming a more server-side, what we call a system daemon process that runs in the background, exposing APIs that you then call into via either another machine or another window or another, a remote system. So kind of like a separation of the node doing its thing in the background and then exposing APIs that you can connect to via another process. And Pavel mentioned that with respects to running a file, we aren't at the place yet where passing in a file name streams the contents of the file to the node. That is coming very shortly in a subsequent release. But it is something that we intend to do, which will enable you to run the node in your basement, by example, and then send Rolang code for it to evaluate via your laptop in your office.
Do we want to mention the systemd service as well?
Sure. You want to talk about that, Henry? You can just talk
Sure.
real quickly to that.
For people on Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and maybe some other Red Hat variants, we currently, if you use the deb package or the RPM package, we now install an rnode systemd service definition and set up a data directory in varlib rnode where all of your keys and the person keys get persisted, and we also create an rnode user and group now. And if you run system control enable rnode.service and then, I'm sorry, system control start rnode service after doing the normal installation process with apt or with dnf or yum, the rnode will run as a service under systemd, which you can do these kinds of client accesses with, like Pavel's doing here. You can either run the sort of REPL client, or you can run eval as from the client as well. So, yep, that will be further fleshed out in the documentation along with the release. So,
that's right.
Yep.
Are there questions about this?
Maybe one important thing in terms of like somebody running it, it's documented, but it's sort of important that, so if you right now, will be easier if I run code for it. One of the things that you will see as a flag here is something that we call data directory, which is needed for the node to run. By default, it defaults to varlib rnode, but it's important, like you can change that directory with that flag. But if you don't, then you have to have this sort of folder available on your file system, and Node needs to have the rights to read and write to that folder. So that's sort of like a new thing which we didn't have, and I think it's important to clarify that that's actually needed right now. So the content of it, as you might see, there are some stuff from RSpace. For example, what I'm using here is that under the keys, you will find all the public keys generated when the node had conversation with other nodes while it was trying to connect to them. Obviously, when we will go to TLS implementation, this feature will disappear because it will be covered by TLS. But for now, all the keys that were exchanged between nodes live under that folder.
Yeah, there's a little bit of garbage in your directory just from previous versions, but what you should see in there is a keys directory and an RSpace directory.
Okay.
And the RSpace directory will contain the data.mdb and the lock.mdb file, and the keys will contain all of those keys as well. So I just want to give a shout out to community member Daniel for stepping up and working on the systemd service with me. He was super, super helpful in that process and definitely helped us get that through. So thanks a lot, Daniel.
Awesome. Anything else we want to talk about? Any questions?
That was a very thorough presentation, actually. I'm glad we had the demos on Monday. This is really, really good. And I think Pavel answered a bunch of questions that came up during the discussion, which was great. I am, again, really, really thrilled about this. If we do have a web-based client, no, we don't have to take out the, was that a Rick and Morty screen?
Obviously, yes.
I was just curious, if we do have a web-based client into the REPL, do we want to take out the HTTP server, or do we leave it there?
HTTP server?
Yeah.
HTTP server for me is considered obsolete. What we want to end up with having gRPC API, and most probably we will run some bridge between gRPC and sort of like HTTP access. So people for example, like to run, curl or any other, tool they use to connect to, the JSON files or whatever, they could do that. But
if I could add some color here, I believe that we will have requirements from exchanges, by example, to use to provide a JSON API or to provide an XML REST API. So I don't know that the HTTP server is dead yet, but how we implement that may be TBD. But there are going to be requirements that we give certain customers JSON APIs and that they use at their own peril. We'll try to talk them into using the gRPC API, but they may want a JSON API or a RESTful interface to the node.
I mean, like in the case of,
we might. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. In the case of Lika and Bittrex, we're not going to talk them into re-architecting their infrastructure, which is running millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to match our API. We're going to match.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's why I said what I said. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Good. Okay, that's awesome. No, really fantastic work. I'm very excited. Anything else, Meta, in terms of technical updates?
I think that's enough. We're swimming in it.
I'm telling you, that's fantastic. Yeah, we're at the 40 minute mark, and we still have a lot to talk about. The next up on the agenda is the board met yesterday, and we talked about several things. Kenny, you want to give an update?
Yeah, hold on. Let me grab our agenda. And sorry, just one moment here.
Yeah, no worries. I put you on the spot.
Yeah, let's see. One thing to note that we didn't actually get through the entire agenda, so the board is meeting again on I think Monday.
Yeah, we had a 3.5 hour meeting.
Yeah, it was extensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting up to the top, RChain Europe board had a great discussion about potentially opening up additional cooperatives in other jurisdictions. The first one targeting Europe, specifically looks like Berlin is where we're going to be looking at. At the very least, there'll be offices in Berlin, but we are investigating all of the options available to us at the time. And another update would be that we're targeting also the next conference to be in August, which is going to have quite a few things to announce. So I don't want to kind of spoil the party there, but some of the things that we were just looking at will become more official. How about I just say it that way? And then we're looking to christen some offices hopefully as well. But August is our time frame. Probably right now mid-August, I think. Right? Is that right, Greg? That we're trying to go for, so that we don't compete with or don't overlap with Burning Man.
That's correct. I mean, the dates are still not nailed down, so
right. Yeah,
there's a little bit of squishiness there, but we're hoping for kind of mid-late August, somewhere in there. Yeah.
What was that, Greg?
Is that a conference in Berlin?
In Berlin.
Yes, in Berlin as well. We don't have a lot more details other than that, but it'll be a big event for sure, and we're targeting to make that as affordable as possible. So our goal here is not to gouge people with $2,000 to $3,000 tickets. We're trying to make this much more affordable, so somewhere in the $200 to $300 range, plus other types of incentives for students and those who. So we're definitely going to try to make it as easy as possible for people to come and join us in Berlin. Next, we talked about our RChain research, which is coming along exceptionally well. We have a weekly stand-up now, going over the different projects and researchers that are starting to come on board and making great progress. There's a letter went out, I think, last week to the researchers that we met with in early March, and some of that is already starting to come back, and even some letters from folks who we didn't get a chance to meet with. So there might be some further additional negotiations happening with the universities themselves, as well as the researchers, but lots of exciting projects around consensus, quantum computing, all kinds of stuff. So look for some of that to becoming more finalized here in the near future. Let's see, we still need to go over a budget for the for 2018, which Kate is continually working on. It seems to be changing underneath our feet from moment to moment. So we're going to try to get a little bit better about forecasting and seeing where we are with our own crypto resources, as well as maybe making some changes or updates to Discord, some additional moderation and things like that. We're also going to be, the board will also be discussing some other like more practical things like email addresses, getting everybody onto the RChain.coop email stuff, as well as using shared folders and some just administrative things here and there, as well as further discussions with our inside counsel and a few other things. Greg, is there anything else you wanted to go over that happened in the board meeting?
I think that's a very, very good summary. If anyone has any questions, we can talk about it.
Sure. Yeah.
Any questions from the community before we turn it over to Reflective and Pythia to give their updates? Woohoo! Silence is golden.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So I think Mernal is on the call because Greg is in flight. Greg Heiss is in flight. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. You have Mernal and Kevin. The rest of our team is all in flight, so I'll give the update from the Reflective side.
Please, thanks very much. Go for it.
Great. So let me split this up into two pieces. I'll split it up into what the pipeline and deal flow looks like, and then I'll talk about university outreach and events. So on the pipeline and deal flow, I'll actually go in reverse order. Let me talk about the pipeline, deals about to close, and then finally deals that we actually did close since we last spoke. Pipeline continues to be very robust. There are 27 opportunities that we're in active discussions with. They span all sorts of verticals, including insurance, healthcare, financial access, asset management, data research, Internet of Things, etc. It's gotten more balanced since we've looked last time, and we're happy to see that a lot of verticals that we previously were interested in and wanted represented have entered. In addition to that, deals that will close soon, we have sent out 6 SPAs, and we're just waiting on final signatures or lawyers to sign off on certain things. But we expect all 6 of those to close in the next, I hate to put a timeline on it because these things are always impossible to predict, but we're hoping all of those are closed and funded in the next 6 weeks. No, sorry, so 2 weeks. And since we last spoke, we actually closed 2 more deals. I'll talk about the first one, and then Kevin can fill you in on the other one. The first one's called Atlas Money. So the website is atlas.money, also internally referred to as the ACX network. This is one we're really excited about. It's a financial inclusion play. They already have an infrastructure built out with 400 plus users. 400 plus agents, 20K users, about $2 million deposited, and 3,000 loans given out with no default. The way it works is it creates a network between the unbanked and people who don't have access to banking, and free agents who can give them access to said services. And they operate mostly in countries where banking infrastructure is limited. Example for which where they're pretty well built out is Ghana. They're really excited to build out the platform on the RChain system. The other deal that we also closed is Proof, and I'll hand that over to Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Really quickly, Proof is a decentralized content validation system. So they're targeting a network of KYC subject domain experts to become validators who then vote staking in order to bet against fake content. And so if you can't get away from the fake news cycle that is, what they're aiming to do is address some of that by incentivizing people who are already journalists and editors who have domain expertise to help validate content. And Luigi and Chris are members of the community as well, and so some of you may have met them previously, but they're really excited to get going with RChain as well.
Great.
I'm really excited to hear about the proof. That's very good. What's the relationship with Civil?
Interestingly, we met with Civil last night. So Civil had a meetup, and we were discussing ways that we could potentially collaborate. More to come on that.
Okay, awesome. Very good.
Great. And I'll continue on the second section where we talk about university outreach and events. So as Greg mentioned, there was an event at UW on the last update. We also had one more event out in Boston. Shahan and myself spoke at Harvard University's blockchain group, and we also got introduced to MIT's blockchain group. There were two panels there. I was on a panel with the CEO of OneLedger, where we talked about the underlying technologies and social impacts of the same. Shahan was on a panel where they talked about investing due diligence and the legal frameworks around the blockchain space. He was joined by lawyers from Perkins Coie, Latham and Watkins, and a couple other large venture funds based out in the Boston area. Overall, very good event. I think we're building a very strong relationship with Harvard and potentially MIT going forward. We think it makes sense to be a gold sponsor to their blockchain group, and they're looking to host a variety of events in the Boston area going forward, and would love to have members of our community, such as Greg M. or Nash or Mike, be keynote speakers at some of these on the technical side. They feel that, relative to the West Coast, they're behind and want to close that gap as much as possible, using us as a potential partner. In addition to that, all of you know that we have our event with Berkeley of Blockchain tomorrow in San Francisco. Greg Meredith will be speaking there. We're also using our extremely strong relationship with Berkeley sort of as a template for further university outreach. And so the ones that are going to happen quite immediately are going to be UW, Michigan, and Caltech. And we have all of those lined up, and hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll also have Harvard and MIT. That's just the start of the plan, and hopefully we can get more on board and get what we're doing as part of the syllabus and curriculum in some places. That's all I had from Reflective. Any questions, guys?
So I do have a question. Oh,
yeah,
can you go ahead?
I was just looking at Atlas, and they looked fantastic. Really interesting project there. Is this similar to? I think there's a remittance company that does something similar to this, where they have. I think it's running in the Philippines. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Or could Atlas also be used for remittances, or is it specifically financial services from peer-to-peer in local communities?
Right now, it's primarily peer-to-peer, but they're looking at a suite of applications going forward. I mean, what they're trying to wrestle with and do properly is make sure they're completely compliant with regulatory frameworks, and so that's sort of what they're navigating. But they'll probably go in that direction soon. They might have a small remittance business, but it's not a major part of revenues or funds flow at this point.
Cool. And do they have any plans to do crypto to fiat or vice versa conversions?
So Lee was actually ahead on that, so I'm not 100% sure. However, I think there is some element of that in general just now. But Kevin, do you have more knowledge on that?
No, not the intricacies of that deal in particular as it relates to crypto to fiat, but I would assume that there is some payment gateway for folks to be able to transact and exchange currencies.
Cool, thanks.
And Greg, I believe you had a question as well.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah. The question I had really has to do with, again, sort of nuts and bolts. I really feel like there's a whole bunch of nuts and bolts applications that, maybe don't look sexy, but when we think about the role and function of them in the decentralized world, probably everyone would want them to be decentralized. So, for example, email, chat, video and audio communication services. these are all plays that I think are going to be essential. I would I'd much rather have a bunch of communication services that I could rely on that weren't the provenance of a centralized party. So I'm just wondering, how if you guys are seeing any entrepreneurs who are tackling this.
Yeah, Greg, I'm just chiming in on the talk that you did at the DevCon. Some of the points that resonated with us were sort of your views on applications that are one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. And so far, the majority of the applications have been in the many-to-many space or the one-to-many. Just in terms of email, chat, etc. We are seeing that. We're also looking at different ways that we could address the communications layer. So being able to have mesh networks be a part of that solution. So we are, keen on looking for, what you mentioned. We're definitely looking for those opportunities. They just haven't been, not that they're, unsexy, they just haven't been as many, because I think that they're a harder problem to solve initially.
I agree with you. I think people have extremely high expectations of our existing communications infrastructure, and it's gonna take a couple of generations of applications based on top of the blockchain before they can get to that. So it's an uphill climb. So I do understand that there's potentially low-hanging fruit in terms of return on investment for other kinds of investment, but this infrastructure stuff has got to happen. But I don't want to take up too much more time because we need to give Pythia a chance, and there's some other updates.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, hi, everybody. It's Lawrence. So, our metric is, as I've always said, it's deals and assets under management. The announcement of the day, as many of you probably already saw, is that we went live with the Trusted Key announcement. So Trusted Key is another digital identity company, but they're really focused in the enterprise space, and there's some very exciting news around healthcare and trusted health information that they're already launching. Greg, I know we had talked about doing a separate time segment for partner companies and portfolio companies. I'd love to figure that out because we never got a chance to present them early. I know Digital Town also wants to present, and that, by the way, addresses your email, chat, and all of those peer-to-peer type communications. The stuff that I saw when I went to Phoenix was pretty top shelf. So when do you think we might be able to set those up?
That's a really good question. Maybe we should set up a kind of a deal day sort of thing. I know that Reflective has something like that in the works. Maybe we can put together a sort of mutual deal day kind of discussion that happens once a month, where startups that have signed or are in the process of signing can talk. I think it would be great if we could do that as a coordinated effort. Is that? Yeah. Okay. All right. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to Patrick and see if maybe he wants to think marketing coordinating that, and if not, then we'll figure something else out.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, definitely want the community involved in that. All right, so deals in the pipeline, which are just crazy exciting, that I'm hoping to be able to announce in the next 2 weeks.
Hi, I called earlier about my HCM.
Murnau, can you mute?
I followed all this.
Murnau, you need to mute. Murnau, mute.
Could I get a replacement?
Oh my. Christian, can you mute him?
No, I mean, my navigator's just not working.
Murnau, you need to mute.
No.
Hey, Christian, I think you can mute him. Can you mute him?
He's now muted.
Okay, awesome. Very
All
good.
right, I'll just, one is potentially a physical retail bank. We've got some supply chain, so we'll be rounding out the fund strategies. Roland and others will be publishing them. We will publish the longer Pythia deal thesis paper on, that really lays out all of the strategies. Coffee company and another healthcare. So all in the pipeline, probably another dozen behind that are in earlier stage, including your favorite mineral rights, Greg. So we talked about gold, and I actually found someone who's an expert in that, and so we're going down the road of talking on that, and of course a decentralized exchange that we should be doing. And we'll be publishing a lot more thought leadership to really broaden the space. We've got a couple of partners in some of the leading accounting firms that want to talk about some of the regulatory things around blockchain and crypto, which just really draw the focus in. And we will be at consensus, and we're arranging meetings. So I will also ping for your calendar as we pull in some partner meetings and interviews, etc.
Sweet. Very good. Thank you very much, Lawrence. As always, I'm really excited to see all of the progress that we're making in terms of getting companies up on the platform. So a few other things. As people may have heard, the Co-op and Reflective and Pythia and Pyrofex have agreed to form a joint marketing organization, and that's moving along apace. Very excited about that. One of the things that's come out of that is an RChain branding effort, and I am very happy to announce that the Co-op has executed an agreement with Tim Gervin to help us with the branding as we move closer and closer to Mercury launch. And per Nash's recommendations, Gervin will be heavily engaged with the community. So there's going to be it's a partnership effort. Tim has a lot of experience in providing designs. They've done all kinds of designs that many people will recognize instantly. One that they did was the Kettle Chips design. So if you've ever seen the Kettle brand in your Safeway or your Thriftway or QFC or whatever, how very Pacific Northwest of me. You instantly recognize that brand. So Gervin supplies a lot of experience and a lot of creativity, but we also want to work with the community and make this a partnership. One of the points here is that we want a kind of pattern language, so that it's not just a single brand, but rather a bunch of design elements that out of which many RChain efforts, whether they're companies that have been funded by Pythia or Reflective or community-based efforts, can brand themselves with these design elements and instantly be recognized as in the RChain community, a part of the RChain family. So that's the aim and the goal here with respect to this effort, and very much why we need community engagement on this. Let's see, any other updates? We're right at the top of the hour. I think that just about covers it for this. Any questions from folks about anything you've heard so far? Going once? Going twice? All right. Just before we sign off, I want to mention that I've been having a lot of fun with my 14-year-old son, who decided for his science project that he wanted to design a CPU. So we've been together learning the Clash hardware specification language that sits on top of Haskell. And a couple of weeks ago, he asked, well, how can we make this CPU run faster? And I said, well, you introduce concurrency. And he said, well, how can we do that? So we talked a little bit about the row calculus. And so now we have a draft version of a row machine that compiles to VHDL. So we're having a lot of fun building a hardware version of the row calculus. So we'll publish a repo for people to poke at in the not too distant future. But it could be quite interesting to think about hardware acceleration for Rolang smart contracts. So with that fun thought, I'm hoping to see you guys next week.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.